Okay, welcome people of CRSN 151, or maybe welcome also to people who just stumbled upon this video for reference material. This is video number 4 of a series of reference videos for SolidWorks. And today we are going to go over basic 3D features in SolidWorks. So very excited. It's the first video where we wandered away from the Sketch tab and into the Features tab. So as I've mentioned in past videos, one of the core principles of any CAD software is you're going to start with some two-dimensional shape, and then you're going to extrapolate that 2D shape into the third dimension by doing something geometric with the 2D shape. And this video will finally explain what that kind of hand-wavy concept is. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with a sketch, and I'm going to gloss over the steps of the sketch because I've gone over that in a previous video. So if you are concerned about how to do the sketch, maybe go back and look at the sketch video. So I'm just going to go ahead and make an arbitrary square. I am going to base it off the origin because I am a good little cadder. Oops, I know. But I'm not going to dimension it because I want to save us all some time. So I just created this random rectangle, and I'm going to extrude it using the extrude boss base tool, which is this tool in the upper left-hand corner. And what that entails is, well, I'll show you in just a second. So I'll just show you versus talking at you. So in order to use one of these tools, you need to select the sketch you're going to extrude. And once you have the sketch selected, then you can select the extrude boss base tool. And I hope you can see what just happened there. I took that square I drew earlier, that rectangle, and I'm now extruding it into the third dimension. So that's the geometric operation we're doing to take the 2D sketch into the third dimension to make a box. And all it does is it takes the sketch and it like kind of, yeah, extrudes it. It pulls it out. You'll see in the left, this dialog box has opened, and it's going to let me do a couple of key things. You don't necessarily always need to interact with every little individual bit of data in these boxes, but the key ones are the amount, the depth of the extrusion. So see if I adjust it from 20 millimeters to 30 millimeters and it increases, or I can adjust it down to 10 millimeters and decrease it. You can also add a taper, which is this icon here. I can click on it and I can change the amount of degrees it tapers by. Again, that's a pretty specific use case, but it can be useful. I can also change the direction of the extrusion. This is really important if, because sometimes SolidWorks won't automatically select the right thing for you. So if I needed the extrusion to be the other way than it's currently going, I would select this icon right here and see how it flips which side the extrusion is coming from. This is a pretty common button in all the other features. If you see it somewhere else, you can remember that it's for switching like the direction of that geometric operation. You can also add a second direction, which can be very useful in specific situations. I'm not going to do it here. See how now, in addition to that 30 millimeter extrusion we had earlier, we now have a 10 millimeter extrusion. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that, but it's essentially the same operation, just adding to the other direction from the sketch. The other thing you can change is you can change the type of extrusion, and it's a little hard to show you what I mean by that because there's very little on the screen right now, but this box right here, this drop-down menu, it says blind right now, and there's a few other options in it. What blind means is it means the extrusion is going to extrude by the numerical dimension that you set it to, in this case, 30 millimeters. But in a lot of situations, it's extremely convenient to say, extrude up into another surface or extrude up to another body or another vertex. But I don't have anything else on the screen right now, so I can't show you that, but I'll come back to that feature, sorry, not that feature, to that aspect of the extrusion in just a bit. So when you have your settings properly dialed in, you can just hit the green checkbox. Don't hit the red. That means cancel, not exit. So if you just spent a lot of time poring over your settings and you finally have the perfect, wonderful extrusion that you always wanted, and you hit the X, you'll get rid of it and it'll be very sad. So make sure to always hit the green checkbox. And see, now we have this box. You'll also notice that in the feature tree, which we've talked about before, you can see that that extrusion appears in the feature tree. And that's important for a few different reasons. The first one is you can edit the feature. So we went over editing sketches in another video, but it's very similar to editing a feature. All you do is click on it once, and then, oh, whoops. Yeah, the other thing is if you click, wait, and then click again, you can name the feature, which I always highly recommend doing. It's like commenting code. Naming your features can save you a lot of time and makes organization much easier. But if you just click it once, you'll see this other dialog box pop up. And one of the options is to edit the feature. And if you click edit feature, that same box originally will pop up and you can make changes to it. See, I just increased the depth from 30 to 40 and you hit the checkbox. Those changes will now be reflected in the 3D model. The other really, really important aspect to finding that feature in the feature tree is if you hit this little drop-down menu by the feature, you can also see the sketch you used. And see, if I click on the sketch, you can actually see the little ghostly outline of what we made in 2D space to create the 3D shape. And if I go back and I change that, so if I was to right-click on the sketch, I can hit edit sketch, and see now we have that box. And if I was to make an adjustment, by the way, what I'm doing is bad. You should not copy me. I'm not using dimensions like I should. You know, I'm going to use dimensions actually. So look, that 10. So nobody can come back later and say, oh, but you didn't use dimensions. You know, you always need to fully dimension your sketches. So I made that edit, and it's now a pretty different shape than it was before. So if I exit the sketch, see, that's going to change the profile of the box. And that's exactly what we mean when we say you're starting with a 2D shape and you're extrapolating it into the third dimension using, using a feature, in this case, extrusions. So that's how the Boss Extrude tool works. It's very simple, but very powerful. But let me show you a few additional things. So first of all, the very first sketch I made, if you were paying attention, was based off of a plane. Because when you first start SolidWorks, there's nothing there. But now there's a cube here, or I guess a box. So there are all these faces we can sketch on. So if I want to make another sketch, like an addition to the box I have, I can go into sketch, and now I can select a face on the box. And this is sort of how your CAD files become more complicated over time, because now I'm going to add something to this box that gives it more detail. So let me do that again. I did it too fast. If I start with sketch and I want to sketch on this face of the box, I can select it. And now my two-dimensional sketch is defined by the 2D plane defined by this face of the box. So my sketch is on this 2D canvas. And that's why it's really important to look the camera normal to the face you're sketching on. So we'll go over that again. As I've mentioned before, if you want to go normal to a surface, you can click on that surface and hit Control-8. And see now, ignoring this big gray blob in front of me, like this is sort of my 2D canvas. So if I make another sketch arbitrarily on the box, I'll go ahead and dimension that. Make that equal so I can use one less smart dimension. And there you go. So now if I exit that sketch, you'll see that the sketch is actually, you see it's in this, it's flat on the surface I selected originally. That's a very important concept in pretty much all CAD software. Is you're going to start with the 2D sketch and go into 3D, and the plane at which you start that 2D sketch on is any flat surface, or in some cases not even a flat surface, that that you can you can define yourself. So if I take that sketch and then I add another extrusion, see, you can see what's happening here. That extrusion is now going to come off of the original box I created. And now like this part has a little prong on it. So this is one part. It's not like I've taken, SolidWorks doesn't think I've taken two boxes and like glued them together. SolidWorks thinks I took the original box and pulled another box out of it. So they're one conjoined piece. Think of it almost as fancy digital clay. So if you have any experience with Maya Mudbox, maybe this makes more sense to you. So lastly, I'm going to show you a very similar tool to extrusion, and that's an extrude cut. It's this icon right here. It works the exact same way that the extrude base works, except it deducts material instead of adding it. It's the Boolean opposite to what I just showed you. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to go normal to this surface here. And remember, you're sketching on this surface, this blue surface that I just highlighted, not this new surface I just highlighted. That's important. See, if I go normal to this, you have no depth perception because you're looking at it straight, but this is on a different level, so to speak, than that surface. So you need to keep that in mind also when you're CADing. So I'll go to sketch, I'll start a new sketch and I'll put it on that surface. I'm just going to put a random circle in. I'm not going to dimension it. Yeah, see, so how that sketch is it was drawn on this surface, not this surface. That's a very important distinction. So I'll select the sketch. I'll go back to the features tab and I'll select extrude cut right here. And as you can see, the dialog box is essentially identical to the extrude cut. Sorry, to the boss extrude, except this is deductive. So see, right now it's set to blind. And what I was hoping to show you last time, but I couldn't, but now I can because there's more stuff on the screen, is if I go from blind, I can actually say up to next. And that's just going to go up to the next surface. I could also go through all, which is going to cut through like every piece of material on the screen. I can also do blind, and I can only cut like halfway through the block. One thing that I like to tell everybody I teach this tool to, though, is if you do a blind cut or a through all cut and you have this like tube way out here, there are situations where that tube is going to deduct anything that comes through it. It's basically a giant cylinder of death. So if I was to add, say, an overhang in this region and I was to position it on the feature tree just right, you might find yourself in a position where there's this extra hole through something else you've created that you didn't want the hole to go through. So it's generally good CAD practice to not have like this extra amount of space on an extrude cut that you're not planning on using. That's why I'm going to change from blind to up to next, and it gives me exactly the amount I want if I wanted to go all the way through. See, so now there's a hole going through it. Okay, see, I hope that was informative. That was a demonstration of the extrude boss base and the extrude cut tool, and a little bit of explanation for how 3D modeling works in these CAD programs. So I hope you remember that's the big takeaway. Remember, we started with a sketch and then we extruded that sketch into 3D. Or in the case of the cut, we started with a sketch and then we cut that sketch out. So keep that all in mind, and don't forget to use the origin, and don't forget to fully dimension your sketches. So see you until next time.